Hi, it's Jacob, and today we're going to be taking a look at the creation of forms using jQuery Mobile. Specifically, we're going to look at the different input element types and how they're formatted differently for mobile devices. For example, if you have a checkbox in a plain text HTML form, it'd be quite challenging to touch it with a touchscreen device without zooming in quite far. However, jQuery Mobile formats it much larger and easier to interact with on a handheld device like an iPhone or Android phone. So let's get started. Okay, so here we are in our HTML document. I already have the basic framework set up for creating a form in jQuery. So the first thing, in order to create a form, you're going to say form action, and for the sake of this example, we'll just point the form to itself and have the method be get. But you would set these to whatever you need them to be, and then we'll say form. So in this form, we're going to be creating a form for someone to put in their personal information. So it's going to be things like name, gender, age, stuff like that. So the first input element is going to be a text box for a first name. So we're going to say label for first name, and then we'll give it the text first name. And our input type is going to be text, and we'll give it the name of first name, and we'll give it the initial value of nothing so that people can insert whatever they want. And then we're going to give it an ID first name as well. So then we'll close that off and save. And then if we go to our document and refresh it, now you can see there's an input field for first name, and you can type in whatever name you want. So now we can create another input for our last name. So we'll say label for, and we'll say this is our last name, and give it the text of last name, and then give it the input type again of text, and give it a name of last name, a value of nothing, and an ID of last name as well. So now let's look at that. That looks good. Let's save that, reload our page, and now you can see we have another input field for our last name. So the next input that we're going to create is for gender. So this is going to be a drop-down menu so that there's different selections, predetermined selections that the user can make. So creating this one is a little bit different, but it starts the same. So you're going to say label equals gender, and then you're going to give it the label of gender and close off the label. And now here's where it gets a little bit different. Instead of saying input type text, you're going to say select ID equals gender and name equals gender. And now we will close that off so we don't forget. Select, and now we have to create our different options. So we'll say our first option has a value of male, and give it the text male, and then close off that option. And our next option has a value of female, and give it the text. And just to keep everybody happy, we'll say like a third option that says option value equals other, and give it some text. And now if we save this and go back to our form and refresh, now we have a nice drop-down menu. It's going to give you your first option as your default value, but if you click the drop-down arrow, you can see there's your other two options, female or other, and whichever one you select, it puts that option text into the box so that the user can see what they've selected. So the next thing that we're going to do is, now that we have first name, last name, and gender, we're going to come down and we're going to make another element for age. We're going to say label equals age. Give it some text. Age. So for this one, we're going to say input. And our max, we'll say, is 120. I don't think there's going to be anybody over 120 years old typing in this form. We're going to say type is a range, and we'll give it a name, age, ID, age. The value to start out, you can give it a starting value, but just for the sake of this, we'll just not give it a value. But we'll say that the minimum value, because you can give, we already gave the max value of 120, but we're going to give a minimum value and say that our minimum value is 13. And then if we close that off and save, go back to our form and refresh, you can see, oops, I made a mistake right here. R-A-N-G-E is how you spell range. Let's refresh again, and now you can see you can either input an age, so I could say 32, or I could use my slider, and that changes the value in my text box live, and it goes to my minimum value, which is 13, or if I slide it all the way up, it'll go to my maximum value of 120. So the next thing we're going to do is pets. So we'll say label equals pets, and give it some text. We'll say pets, and close the label. And for this, we'll say input type is checkbox. So it'll give the user the opportunity to check multiple pets depending on which pets they have. So we'll say ID equals, we'll say the first one is dog, and we'll give it the name also of dog. And then we'll close off that option. And then we're going to give it a label. So we'll say label for dog is dog, and close that label. And now if I were to save this and go back to our form, refresh, now you can see we have our label pets and dog, and we can turn this on or off, making that selection. Let's have 4 options. So we have dog. Let's make another option, cat. And we can make another one, hamster. And we can make our last one, fish. Fish. So now if we have this and go back to our form and refresh, you can see now we have dog, cat, hamster, fish. We could select however many we have. So now we have a few different types of inputs. We have some text boxes, we have a slider, and we have some check boxes. So looking at this form right now, it actually is not looking too bad, and you can see how as you click and drag for different size devices. So if you have a smartphone or wider, like if you had, for example, an iPad, everything automatically resizes itself so that it fits on the screen that you're working with. Now, something to clean this up a little bit, because right now everything looks kind of scrunched together, all the different, like the text fields and the drop-down box. There isn't a whole lot of space here. Now, you could go in and add some padding. However, jQuery Mobile has something in place to take care of this, and this is called field contain. This is something that will clean up the look of your form a little bit. So if we say, let's make this our first one. We'll say div data role equals field contain. And then if we go down here and say div, and then save. Now if we go back and we reload, now notice how all the labels are above right now. So the first name is above the field for first name, and there's very little space right here. Now if I refresh this, now see how there's more space there, and it added a line. And now if you notice, if I expand this, like if someone was using an iPad or a large tablet, the label for the field is now next to the the element that it is labeling. So if I'm using a smartphone, it'll be on top to help save space. But if I have more screen real estate, like for an iPad, it puts it on the side to make the layout a little bit better to suit the screen size of the device. So now I'm going to go through and add these divs to all of our different elements just to clean up our form a little bit. Now going back to our code, we're going to create a couple more input elements. So far we've done the text box, we've done multi-select, we've done a slider and checkboxes. So the next thing that we're going to do is going to be a flip switch. This is something that is used for a Boolean value like true, false, yes, no. Just like all the many of the others, we're going to say label for, and we're going to say siblings. So asking if the user has siblings. And we'll say the label is, do you have siblings? And then we'll close that label. And then sliders are set up kind of like selections. So we're going to say select name equals siblings, ID equals siblings. Except for this, we're going to say data role equals slider. And then we're going to create our two options. We're going to say option value equals yes. And for yes, so that they can say yes, they have sibling. Close that option and then say option value equals no for no siblings. Give it the text of no. And close that option. And then close the select. And I'm also going to take this field contain and give it to this as well, just so that we can keep our formatting looking all the same. And now if I save and go to my form and refresh, you can see it says, do you have siblings? Yes, no, and a simple click. Oops, you can see how there it says yes, but there's no text for my no. It's because right here I missed that brace. Now if I resave and refresh, now you can see it's working correctly. Another input type very similar to checkboxes are radio buttons, which are laid out the same visually. However, rather than being able to select multiple options within the same field set, you're only able to select one, and if you choose another one of the options, the previous option you selected is deselected. So like, for example, with pets, people are able to have a dog and a cat and a fish. So you could select all three of those options. However, if it was something where, like, for example, your house, like you would say you live in a house or an apartment or say a condo. And so if you clicked condo, but then you're like, oh, wait, no, I didn't mean to click that. I meant to click house. When you go to click house, it will deselect condo so that it won't submit into the form that you live in both a house and a condo. So the first thing you're going to do, just like all the rest, is say label equals, we'll call it house, and we'll say, where do you live? And then we'll close off our label and say input type equals radio. Our ID equals, we'll say our first living option is a house. So we'll say house. Name equals, now this is where it gets different than checkboxes. The name for all of your radio options needs to be the same. So we'll say name is home, and then we will close that off. And now we just have to create our label for that. So we'll say label for, and now for this we're going to use our ID. So our label for house is house. And close our label, save, refresh. Now you can see rather than having a checkbox in a square, we have a dot in a circle. And so now we're just going to use the same method that we did with our checkboxes to create our other options. We'll say we'll do 3. We will have our second option to be a condo, and we're keeping the name the same. So house is a type of home, condo is a type of home, and we'll make this one an apartment is also a type of home. And actually, it would probably make sense if we change this to home as well, so it's a little less confusing. So the label for our home field set of radio buttons is home rather than house, because then that would get confusing because that's one of our radio options. So let's go through, make sure that we fix all this. So this is going to be condo and condo. And this one, name staying the same as home, but this is going to be apartment and apartment. Now if we save, reload, now you can see when you select this, and then when you select condo, it deselects house automatically, so you can only choose one option within this field set. Now the last thing that you need at the bottom of any form is going to be a submit button. So we're going to go back to our form, and we'll say div data role equals field contain, and then we will close that. And now we're going to go up here and we're just going to make a simple button for submit. And I'm going to say input type equals submit, because this is going to be our form submit button. The value is going to be whatever text you want to appear in your button. So I'll say submit form, and then we will close that off. And now if we save, go to our form, and now you can see we have the button at the bottom of our page to submit the form. And now if I click this, right now it's just going to link us back to our form, because at the very top we have not linked it anywhere. So now you can see how using jQuery Mobile, we were able to create a very professional looking form that would look great on, if we squeeze it down, you can see how it looked great on a phone, because all the fields automatically resize themselves. And it was very easy to do thanks to jQuery Mobile's built-in formatting. If you'd like to see a write-up for everything we did in this video, go ahead and look down in the link in the video description is a link to a document with a step-by-step guide on how to do all these different options. And I've also linked the jQuery Mobile website that shows many more options that you could do besides text and a slider or checkboxes. There's many, many more options and many more formatting choices that you could do, changing the color of the slider or changing the text. So that's all linked down below. Thank you for watching.